Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel, and hi if you're new here, I'm Jade, and it's time to talk about my most anticipated reads for the rest of 2026. So I always split this video into two separate installments throughout the year, but yeah, I feel like a lot doesn't get announced until partway through the year, and then I miss a lot. Like if I was to do it all in January, a lot wouldn't be on there. So I like to sort of split into two halves, so I kind of have a lot more of the announcements for the second half of 2026. So this is my July to December most anticipated reads. Just like the first half of the year, I have gone for 15 books. That's mainly because I feel like there's sort of like an obvious sort of 10 or so that I'm really excited for. Then I've tried to find a few others or explain a few other reasons for why I'm excited about others as well. Disclaimer, obviously some of these release dates are probably subject to change, so hopefully they don't get delayed, but I know that sometimes I've spoken about books and then the dates moved and they haven't actually come out when I thought. But without further ado, let's just get on and let me talk about, in order, hopefully, of release, what I am most looking forward to over the next few months. So the first book on my list actually releases on the 7th of July, so super soon, and I am currently on a book buying ban. One I am sticking to. Anything I've ordered before yesterday is allowed, but apart from that, I am actually officially on a book buying ban aside from things for my book club. They're my exceptions. So some of these books I will not be able to pick up when they come out, but they are definitely books I will be looking out for as time goes on. I am enforcing this book buying ban for 75 days, and there will be a video to come with that in a few months' time. But this first book that releases on the 7th of July is Everything Was Beautiful and Nothing Hurt by Ben Reeves. I will say this is a bit more of one of my off-the-wall choices, but it sounds so good to me, and the sort of like early reviews on Goodreads are really positive overall, and it just sounds like my kind of thing. It sounds so intriguing. I'll be honest, I don't even know anything about this author, because sometimes if like I've heard authors' names, it makes me kind of excited for books that are coming out. But this is all on what the book plot sounds like. So let me read you the synopsis. So here it is. Travis is death in the modern world. He wears jeans and a t-shirt and lives in a small grey town. His job is to offer people comfort in the final hours of life. He's stoic, gentle and a little naive, despite everything he knows. He's young and handsome, despite who he is. Each death he witnesses is meaningful to him. He listens, never judges, and most importantly, never tries to change anyone's fate. He knows that every life must eventually end to maintain the balance of the universe, and he respects the cycle. Then he meets Dahlia, a midwife, and her boisterous 8-year-old daughter Layla, who live across the hall. As Dahlia and Layla come to embrace Travis, it becomes more difficult to maintain that detachment that's allowed him to function for so long. Their time together teaches him what truly is important in life, and what might be irrevocably lost in death. Written with radiant warmth, wisdom and compassion, Everything Was Beautiful and Nothing Hurt is a timeless story about appreciating life, accepting the end, and finding our place in the universe, especially when it feels most impossible, that will resonate with anyone who's ever loved or lost or worried at times passing. So it just sounds super relatable. It does sound like it could be a little bit emotional, but I do like a bit of an emotional book. But also what made it stand out for me is the title of the book is a famous line from Slaughterhouse 5, which I had to read at university. In all honesty, it's been a long time since I read that, but obviously it's a very, very famous book, and I just recognized the line, so that kind of made it stand out, this book, a little bit. In all honesty, I can't find a solid listing for what genre this book is going to go into, but I'm guessing it's just going to be in the literary fiction category. I have seen mentions of magical realism, so maybe that's part of it, I don't know, but for me it just sounds like the kind of book that I feel like everyone's going to relate to, especially if you're very empathetic like I am, so I feel like it could be like a little bit of a hard read, but like a good, effective one, hopefully. And as I said, the rating overall is really high on Goodreads right now. I haven't really read the reviews because I don't want to risk any spoilers, but this is a book that I just feel like will be a really good one to pick up, and a little bit different, because I'm not gonna lie when I say a lot of my anticipated reads are fantasies. So the next book on my list released on August the 4th, and that is Autumn at the Cat Cafe by Kathleen Fuller. I kind of saw this mentioned a little while ago, and anything that has cat in the title is going to capture my attention. And it sounds like that perfect kind of cozy autumnal read. So even though it comes out in August, like in summer, I feel like it is one that maybe I want to pick up in the fall. I will say the Goodreads ratings aren't the best overall as like percentages go when I often compare books I like, but I'm hoping it's just kind of one of those like cute cozy reads that maybe isn't like anything groundbreaking, but is still just really good for that time of year. And I never just go purely on Goodreads ratings because some books I love don't have the best ratings, so you know. The synopsis for this is super long, but a quick summary of what I believe it's about is it is about an old gentleman that owns a bookstore who sadly passes away, and then the woman who runs the cat cafe next door really wants to purchase the bookstore. However, she doesn't really have the funds to do this, and the nephew that has now inherited the store really needs the money, so he is not happy and does not want to sell to her. And essentially, I think the book is about her trying to persuade him to. So it sounds like a very, very cute, cozy autumnal read. And I think that it should do what I'd want out of that, even if it's not, like I said, the most outstanding book. I mean, it's got books, it's got cats, so a book can't sound much more me. So I feel like I have to give this one a try. And that's why it's made it to my list. And then we're skipping right ahead to September. September is gonna be a fire month, I tell you. I feel like half my list is September. It's gonna be so good, and I'll be off my book buying ban by then. Not that I can allow myself to buy all of these at once, but some of them I will have to. And we are kicking off September very, very strong with my third choice of my most anticipated releases, and that is the new Rachel Gillig novel, The Knave and the Moon, which is the second part to The Night and the Moth. As it is a second part, I am not going to go into the synopsis because obviously if you haven't read the first part, you're not going to know. But essentially, I loved the first part. So if you haven't read The Night and the Moth, go and pick that up so that you can be ready for this one. I just think her writing is great. I think the story was very unique, and I really like the characters and how it was written. So yeah, go give that a try if you kind of like your fantasy novels. And even though it is a fantasy, there's like a slight part of it that has a slight dystopian feel, only with like a certain area of the novel, I guess, but it kind of has like a bit of that Handmaid's Tale feel for me, I think. But if you have read The Night and the Moth, then let me know how excited you are for The Knave and the Moon. So then skipping ahead to September 8th, there are two books on my radar for this one. The first one is The Pirate Queen by Ariel Lawhon. I read The Frozen River earlier this year and I loved it. So this is a little bit different. This is a historical novel. That tends to be what she writes in. I think this one is described as historical adventure. It definitely sounds like it's going to have very different vibes to The Frozen River. But let me read this one to you. Grace O'Malley was born to be at sea. Raised alongside her brother by their father, chief of the name of Clan O'Malley, Grace learns early that her dreams of open water are not compatible with the life she's expected to lead as the daughter of a noble family. And when her father marries her to the wrong man, a neighbouring chief named Donald, Grace's world shifts for the worse. Undaunted, Grace raises a family without abandoning her passion, aiding her hot-tempered husband in his campaigns against rival tribes. Eventually ousted from her husband's land in the wake of his death, Grace returns to her childhood home and begins her career as pirate in earnest, claiming new territories and finding deeper love, only to see her livelihood threatened by English incursions into Ireland, and her family endangered in an attempt to check her power. So yeah, this just sounds really good to me. I really, really enjoyed Ariel Lawhon's writing in The Frozen River. So I just have real hopes for this, and also I kind of like that it gives me something a little bit different on my radar, because as I said, a lot of it is going to be like fantasy. So yeah, just one I'm really excited for because of how much I liked her other book. So hopefully I like this one a lot too. And then the other novel that I am really looking forward to on the 8th is a new R.F. Kuang novel called Taipei Story. It's described as a sort of coming of age story about a girl who goes to Taipei. For those that don't know, that's Taiwan. I will be honest, the score on Goodreads so far is just not that great, but I generally love R.F. Kuang. Like, I haven't read anything by her that's bad, so I'm still excited to try this one. College freshman Lily Chen is off to spend the summer in Taipei at an intensive language program like so many Chinese American students before her, hoping to connect with the culture she inherited but never fully understood. But a promising start quickly unravels. Her classes are grueling, her roommate is driving her insane, and a reckless trip to the hot springs with a guy she barely knows soon has her classmates viciously gossiping. She feels adrift, a foreigner in a country she thought would feel like home. Then shocking news, Lily's grandfather has passed away. The loss forces her to grapple with now unanswerable questions about her family history. As Lily grieves, she's drawn into a journey of self-discovery, piecing together memories, stories, and silences over a series of hilarious and devastating attempts at connection. So yeah, honestly, to me, it sounds like a really interesting concept. And like I said, I really do enjoy R.F. Kuang, the books that I have read. I did find Catabasis a little hard to get into because it was quite a lot at the beginning, but I still ended up really enjoying that novel. I love Yellowface. I still have the Poppy War trilogy on my TBR, which I need to get to. So yeah, I feel like she's just one of those authors that I will try anything because I think she writes really well in all different genres. Also on September 8th is the release of Burn of the Everflame by Penn. I will say I haven't actually started the series yet, but the reason this is on my list is I have been waiting and waiting for the release of this book to actually dive into the series. Because this book just got more delayed, and I saw so many people getting frustrated about this, I was like, I do not want to start the series until I just know they're all available, because in certain respects it felt like this book was just never going to come, and I was like, I cannot start a series that has that little risk of maybe just not being completed. But alas, it has its release date, and therefore it's made my list because that is my motivation to finally start the Spark of the Everflame series, which I am so excited about because I've heard really, really good things. And yeah, so if you like that series, know that September 8th is when the next one's coming out, so you guys can continue, and for me it's a sign that I can finally start as soon as I have time on this series. So then we move right ahead to September 15th with an exciting release, which is Grim Tidings by BK Borison. And you know what's even more exciting is I already own it. What I will say is Good Spirits, that was actually sort of like the first part of this series, although I think they're just interconnected standalones. I don't think they're like books you have to read in order. What I will say is that I didn't love Good Spirits. I really enjoyed it, but I have higher hopes for this one because generally I do really like BK Borison's writing. There was just a few things I didn't quite connect to in Good Spirits, but I still really enjoyed it. I didn't dislike it. I think I gave it 3.75 in the end. So this might be one of the most exciting arcs I've ever received, and this is a book I definitely would have bought and given a try. So let me tell you the synopsis. It says, Darcy Moore is tired of death, which would be fine and good if she wasn't a Grim Reaper. Determined to outrun her designation as the villain, Darcy decides she won't be dragging her next assignment to the underworld. She'll be saving him instead. Unfortunately for Darcy, there's a complication in her plan. Guardian Angel Gabriel Atos doesn't tolerate threats to his little corner of the world. And a Grim Reaper showing up at his bar is as deadly as it gets. But when he realises Darcy is not as she seems, Gabriel must decide if he can trust his growing feelings or hold on to his long-standing grudge. But magic doesn't come without consequences, and the Department of Hauntings and Spirits will eventually come calling for their missing Reaper. A spooky yet simmering enemies to lovers tale to keep you warm this fall. So in case you haven't read Good Spirits, this is a completely, entirely different sounding story. So I don't think just because I wasn't in love with the first story that I won't love this. This sounds more interesting to me. I like the fact that it's sort of all set in this kind of like underworld area. And I like it that it's like Grim Reaper and Angel. I feel like this is going to be really interesting. So I cannot wait to dive into this. Stick around because I will read this sometime soon. Because at first I kind of thought that this was going to be a Christmas sort of novel again, like Good Spirits was, but I don't think so. So I can read this whenever and it's going to absorb very nicely, I hope. And then skipping ahead in September even more, we have the 22nd of September for the new Adalyn Grace novel called The Wretched Divine. I am so excited for this one because if you missed my videos last year, if you weren't here then, you'll know that I adored the Belladonna trilogy, like absolutely adored it. And I've obviously been hearing about her having a new novel this year for a while, and I've been so excited for this one. And I am pleased to report that so far on Goodreads it's scoring pretty high. So let me tell you the synopsis. Aurelie Chanteloon was born to serve. Raised as a knight in a kingdom ravaged by demons, she spent her life honing her blade, driven by the memory of the monsters who tore her family apart, and by the knowledge that she's one of the few who can stop them. If Aurelie can claim her first kill, she'll inherit a legacy passed down through the Chanteloon, a soul bound with Uriel, an angel whose power is vital to her kingdom's survival. But when those she loves begin turning into the very monsters she's sworn to destroy, Aurelie is forced to seek help from the last place she ever imagined. Desperate, she forges a second and far more dangerous bond with a Severin, a demon she can hardly trust, but who claims to know how to end the war for good. With their lives and fates entwined, Aurelie, Uriel, and Severin must team up to hunt down a cure capable of turning demons back into humans. But the more they learn about one another and the deeper their relationships grow, the more Aurelie begins to question the war and her place in it. With both of her bonded on opposing sides, she'll have to continue to stand with the angels or risk everything by trusting a demon. It sounds like my kind of fantasy novel. I do love the whole like angel demon thing. So yes, so excited for this one. So yes, new Adalyn Grace novel. If you like the Belladonna trilogy, obviously give it a go. I think this is going to have quite different vibes, but hopefully this ends up being a really good series. And then the final one for September, on September 29th, is the new Empyrean series book. I cannot even talk about this one much because we still don't know, as of the time of recording this video, what it is. Watch her actually announce everything before I post this, so this video feels outdated like instantly. So yeah, we are getting a sort of, I guess, maybe like side story or something within the Empyrean series, which is not book 4. It has been made very clear it's not. And it's also been alluded that it's going to be 224 pages. But ultimately, this had to make my list, even if I don't know what it is, just because I love the Empyrean series so much. It's kind of what got me back into fantasy. Like, I used to read a lot of it when I was younger, and then I feel like I kind of fell out of it a little bit, and then I got Fourth Wing. And now I'm back on that fantasy train. So I owe a lot to the Empyrean series, and therefore, whatever this is, I'm sure I will love it. So then moving into October, we have something that I am very excited for, but maybe also a little bit apprehensive for. I was debating whether this should make my list, but I've decided it should, and that is the new book by Veronica Roth, which is like an alternate universe version of Divergent. This one is called The Sixth Faction, and this book basically explores what if Triss, our main character in Divergent, what if she chose a different faction to Dauntless? I don't want to say too much more because if you haven't read the original series, I don't feel like you probably need to for this, as it's like an alternate thing. But I do feel like it is really written for the fans to kind of explore something different, I feel like. Supposedly this is going to be a duology, so this is going to be part 1. But as I grew up with Divergent, as I loved that book when I was younger, and that whole entire series, to be honest, I am excited for this one. Like I said, a bit apprehensive because I'm like, do we need an alternate version when I love the original so much? But, you know, it's been a while, you know, it has. And so I'm kind of excited to revisit these characters. So at the end of the day, maybe it's a money grab for the fans of the original, but hopefully it's just really good. And honestly, so far, so good on the Goodreads rating. So I have high hopes. And also on the 6th of October, we do have a new Freida McFadden novel. Some of her novels entice me a lot more than others, but this one sounds great because it's called The Witch. I love books about witches. I love anything like that, especially around October. And The Witch is a psychological thriller, and it follows Julia Barlow, who flees to her ancestral Massachusetts estate to hide out. But while investigating the estate's dark past, she becomes entangled with the supernatural and uncovers secrets tied to a 1692 witchcraft execution. And honestly, that just sounds like my kind of thing, because I kind of love my sort of historical fiction, magical realism novels that are set around that time with, you know, Salem, Massachusetts. And I know that obviously this is kind of more modern and she's going to an estate in modern time and looking at things from the past, but for me that sounds really good. I love anything to do with sort of the old witchcraft. I think mainly because I actually grew up in a town called Manningtree in the UK, which is kind of like the Salem of the UK. Obviously not as famous, but it is. That's where all the witch hangings and everything was. So I feel like it's just a topic I'm naturally drawn to. Then moving to the 13th of October, we have a new Marie Lu novel, and I just finished Red City and I loved it. So I have such high hopes for this one. This one is called Mortal Things, and again, let me tell you what it's about. It says, Rosalind Fairchild didn't believe in gods, but one chose her anyway. Rose despises Raven, the god of death, his mysterious commands, his mercurial moods, his closed heart. But most of all, she loathes that she was forced to become his harbinger, a human mercenary tasked to fulfill their god's every want and whim. Still, she would do it again, because being a harbinger is the only thing keeping her best friend alive. When a murder rocks the world of the gods, Rose is suddenly thrust into the immortal realm spotlight as Raven's heir. This is her chance to free her friend once and for all. But in order for her to ascend, she must first prove herself to the other gods, and the one person standing in her way is a fellow harbinger. Etienne Bouchard is notorious for his sly wit and charming good looks, and Rose can't stand that he is the one assigned to test her abilities. But as their initial hostility evolves into an intense attraction, they find that the gods' secrets go deeper than they ever expected. Something is wrong in the immortal world, something that threatens to break their bond and engulf them all in war. As Rose and Etienne fight to uncover the truth and trust each other with their hearts, they realize that everything hinges on the same: how far would you go to save the person you love? Again, another thing that sounds right up my streets with the whole gods topic, so definitely sort of more in that fantasy realm. And like I said, Red City by Marie Lu is definitely up there with one of the better books I've read this year. Like, I gave it 5 stars, loved it. So yeah, she's definitely becoming one of those authors I will try anything she releases. And then we skip ahead to the 27th of October. If you're a huge fantasy fan, you know what I'm going to say next. It is time for ACOTAR 6. Yay! However, this is another one that we have not really been given any details on. There's not even a front cover as of the time of me filming this. We don't have a title, it's just ACOTAR 6. So I don't know where we're going with this one, but just like the Empyrean series book, this is something I am pretty confident I am going to love because I have loved everything I've read by Sarah J Maas so far. I'm currently working through the Crescent City series so that I finished everything before this book comes out, and then I would have read everything by her. So yeah, I am very, very excited for this one, but obviously not much more to say other than it's definitely up there with this is probably my most anticipated read of the whole entire year, I'm not gonna lie. I feel like just because everyone's been waiting for ACOTAR 6 for so long. And then the 27th of October is just gonna be a great day because Liang is also releasing a book, and if you don't know, her book A Song to Drown Rivers is up there with one of my favorite books of all time. I absolutely adored that story. And that, at the time of recording this, is her only released adult novel. Like, everything else is YA, and even though I did find one I absolutely loved, I feel like I connect more to her adult novels, so I'm so excited that we're getting another one, finally. Once again, it's kind of in that sort of fantasy realm, but let me tell you what it's about. 2 gods strike a bargain that lead them on a journey with devastating consequences in this lush historical fantasy from New York Times bestselling author Anne Liang. China in the Age of Brilliance, where gods freely wander 3 realms. Amongst them is the cruel and beautiful death god, who has never failed to collect a soul on time. Until now. For when he seeks out Ruja, the noble god of healing, and the only god he is fated to kill with his own hands, she makes him an offer he can't refuse. She will help lift the excruciating century-old curse placed upon him if he gives her a 1-month reprieve. Ruja knows that she isn't as noble as everyone believes. Her deal with death is merely an excuse to buy herself time while she figures out an escape plan. But when her plan causes the Celestials' palace's collapse and the beloved crown prince's disappearance, she and Death are both held responsible. The only way to avoid the wrath of the other gods is to travel across the realms and safely retrieve the crown prince themselves. Yet the journey proves far more treacherous than expected. As the unlikely alliance between them blooms into more, and Death's resolve to kill Ruja weakens by the day, neither can outrun their intertwined fate without devastating consequences. A mysterious plague, an empire-destroying flood, 1,000 deaths, and rising to restore the balance Ruja's disrupted. And if Ruja continues to live despite the will of the heavens, this is only the beginning. So yeah, another sort of god-based story, and like it says, historical fantasy. That's what A Song to Drown Rivers was, and I would say it was heavier on the historical side for A Song to Drown Rivers. I feel like this is gonna lean even more into the fantasy side, but yeah, really, really excited for this one. If you still haven't picked up A Song to Drown Rivers, give it a try, and if you like that one, get ready for this release. I am so excited. And then the final book on my list releases on November 17th. I couldn't find a lot for November and December. Maybe some just aren't announced yet, sadly, but I feel like this one that is on my list is exciting because it's another Rebecca Yarros novel. So yeah, she's on my list twice with the new Empyrean series and her new standalone. So what I will say is I've generally enjoyed most things that I've read by Rebecca Yarros. I have still got quite a few of her other books to read, but I've read a couple of her books that aren't the Empyrean series, and I've enjoyed both of those. So I was like excited to see that she's releasing another one, and I think it's really good that she does take breaks from the Empyrean series and like writes other things just to kind of like give her time. So this novel is Callista Morin has spent a lifetime putting her own plans aside to care for other people. Once she and Darren Knight announce their engagement, she thinks her future is finally set. But when a routine sailing trip goes tragically wrong, a cyclone blows those carefully made plans away. Stranded on an island for the next 18 months alongside the crew and her fiancé's cousin, Callista discovers a strength she never knew she had, and she begins to question the life she always thought she wanted. With Dominic, an ex-army medic, she finds true peace, and a version of herself that she doesn't need to explain. They resist their connection at first, but as months wear on and the hope of rescue fades, something real starts taking shape, built on who they are when everything else is stripped away. When they're finally found, the world hasn't changed, but they have. And in the height of a modern media frenzy, learning to live as the people they've become will challenge not only their definition of survival, but love. So yeah, I really like the concept of this one. I quite like a stranded on an island story. I feel like because a lot of books in my childhood kind of explored that, like in a very different concept to this, but I remember, I can't think of the name, but there was definitely a book by like Michael Morpurgo where a kid gets stranded, I think, and washed up on shore, and is sort of like trying to fend for himself. And then there's Lord of the Flies, where the group of boys end up on the island. I'm actually rereading that right now because there's the new Netflix show, and I kind of wanted to reread the book before because I have not read it since I was way younger. I mean, it must have been like 20 years at least, probably more than that since I read the book. So yeah, I just think this Rebecca Yarros one does sound like my kind of thing. But yeah, they are my 15 most anticipated releases for the rest of this year. So hopefully you've enjoyed seeing what I am most looking forward to. Please let me know if you think there are some good ones that I have missed, because obviously there are a lot of books coming out and there'll just be a lot that I just don't really know the author yet. And if there's some of your favorite authors releasing things that maybe I haven't discovered, please let me know, and I will see you again real soon. Bye!